Can I do this? You're going to do this.
You can. Hi, and welcome back to PlanFirst Live. I'm Sian Larkin. I'm the Manager of Design Services at PlanFirst Design. And with me today is Kim Reiche. Kim is an expert in many, many areas, one of them being lighting, which is our topic for today. So Kim is going to do the talk today, and she's going to share with us a lot of her experiences and her knowledge. Keep in mind you can put comments in or ask questions if you like, and Kim can answer them during the session. But Kim, I'm going to hand over to you.
Excellent. Thanks very much for inviting me, Sian. It's been a while since I've had to chat about lighting, but it is a passion of mine, without a doubt. Let's go straight into the presentation. Sorry, you better control here a little bit. I'm not very technical.
Okay, there we go.
Okay, so the magic of lighting.
You can use these.
Why is it so important? And this is a question that is often overlooked when you're designing a renovation or a new home, or even just upgrading your interior. Like everything, technology has advanced hugely, and the fittings are getting smaller, the luminaires are getting smaller, but the quality of lighting is improving all the time. Plus, they're becoming more and more efficient. They're not having a burn effect on fabrics and artwork and things like that now. So it's not a hot light like the old halogen fittings. So things like that need to be considered all the time. Whether the home is a high-end home or whether it's a stock standard Kiwi house, it is definitely worth getting someone involved in the lighting. Understanding how you can improve the space, how you can improve the size of the space, how you can maybe have some different zones. And then, of course, there's the different types of lighting that we need to consider. Sorry, I'm doing driving two wheels here. So basically, we look at these different lighting options in any building, or whether it be a commercial or a residential. We're going to look at task lighting, ambient lighting, decorative lighting, and accent lighting. That's basically how we would divide it up. Accent lighting, I'll just start off there, and I'll come back to it towards the end of the presentation, but that can often be something that's architectural, something that's exterior, something that's maybe in a big entrance hall of a foyer or something like that. Whereas the task lighting is exactly what we say, task. Ambient is our general lighting, and then the decorative, which I'm very passionate about. So we'll just talk a little bit about task lighting. This allows us to focus on activities, areas that would need maybe a kitchen, where we're wanting to have clear benchtop space and maybe a good color rendering. In a kitchen, there's often very, very shiny objects. We need to think about how we're going to light that up, not having shadows. And I go into so many homes and see straight away at the kitchen sink, it's a dark space because the lighting is behind and you really can't see what you're doing at the kitchen sink. So we really want to try and eliminate all of those dark spaces. The lumen output is really important. The color rendering, the CRI, is very important. And of course, with the development of LEDs, we're getting better lighting quality all round. So consider that. I know when I've worked working in hospitals and operating rooms and things like that, the color rendering is really important, because red needs to be red and blue needs to be blue, and you want to have low glare. So that's important. I'll talk a little bit about color rendering later on and explain exactly what that is. Okay, yeah. So this is just an example. This is out of Bright Green. This is a little Australian company. Well, they're not so little anymore, but they're developing a great product, a great medium home product. But this is just a cross-section of their little hidden wash recessed light. Now, I'm going to show you two applications for this, but you can see it's tiny. It's only 17 mils. It's really a tiny little fitting that can slot into your cabinetry. But when you see it in actual use, here it could be considered an accent light, but it's also a task light. So it's a real moody room, and they're just taking the light off everything, but it's in the important areas on top of those stairs. Also noting that it's a timber floor, so we want to make sure we've got a really good color rendering to pick up that timber. Same luminaire in a kitchen environment. So it's right ahead of you. It's going to be throwing light on the back wall, which is also those browns, quite a difficult color tone to make sure we get that the right color rendering, but it's giving you a good task light. You can see the lemons are really yellow, the black is black, the surface is very clear, but it's not glary in your eyes if you were to be standing there. Same luminaire again in a worktop environment. So what that's doing, and we all know that you can't light the front of your computer screen, so it's lighting it up behind, so that you are going to rely on the light of your computer screen to give you that that good visual, but you still have a good feel of light around you. Next up, we've got ambient light. So this is probably the most difficult light, particularly in a renovation, because you sometimes can't change that. So you have to sort of retrofit it. This is a floss fitting. So this is maybe a little bit of a higher end finish, but they are available in a number of products. Here you can see the standard downlight, and then you can see the wall washer, and you can see the gimbaled light, which is the one at the very back, the smaller one. They come in a variety of sizes, but it's giving you the flexibility of having just a straight ambient downlight to be able to wash against the wall, or to be able to change the angle, which is going to give you quite a lot of flexibility, and give you a consistent lumen output in your home. You could have them circuited differently so that you're creating zones within that, but it does give you those really, really good options. I'll show you a few installations with this light, and I'll talk you through how they work. So here is a gym. Now, this is all marbled. So normally that if it was a halogen, those walls would be quite sparkly and quite glary. Lots of mirrors, very low glare. But yet you can see that there's quite a consistent light on the floor. So it's giving us quite a good consistent lumen output with very few lights, and very low glare, which is really what you want to have in an ambient light. This hallway is quite an interesting one. It's the same fitting, but you have on the very end at the door, you've got a wall washer, and on the right, you've got a wall washer. And then in the hallway right there on the left-hand side in the foreground, that's just a normal downlight. But if you have a look at the floor, you've got quite a consistent ambient light there. So it's giving us the effect of a really good, in a tight space with lots of doors, lots of things going on, but it's hiding everything else, making the pictures on the wall the feature, but giving you a good visual of the light. That's a commercial application where you've got to have a clear path for your visitors. This is a dressing room. So in a dressing room, really important to have good lighting. When you open those cupboard doors, you want to see, is that a red, green, blue dress, or what am I wearing today? You may also have a mirror in there where you're going to be able to see yourself in a full light, and you don't want to have extra wrinkles or baggy eyes or anything like that. So you really want to make sure you're getting a really good consistent lumen. I'm not a fan of scalloping, so you can see the scallops on those, and you could adjust that slightly by moving the lights out and maybe having one or two lights in the center, but that's a personal preference. But I would suggest in a wardrobe like this, the product that is stored at the top is maybe not used every day, so getting that lighting on the everyday product is important. This is the same fitting, and this could be considered an accent lighting. But I wanted to show you here how that wall washer lights up the feature of the shuttered concrete behind the fireplace, but doesn't spill any light anywhere else. So it's quite a moody, and that's what you want around a fireplace, because you want the flame to be the feature. So quite a nice use of the light there. Just in a tone, and I would suggest that this would be the gimbal light, so you can actually move it to quite a tight light arch. Same fitting again. So because it's rimless, you can take the ceiling right up to it. But this is a really good example of how the light throws down and you haven't got much light bleed on the ceiling. So a very dark ceiling, but if you have a look at the statue of the cow, the light's hitting it quite nicely again on the tabletop, and then how consistent is that light on the floor? Very good ambient lighting. That all comes down to the quality of the luminaire, absolutely, without a doubt. Then we've got decorative lighting. So I do have my own take on this decorative lighting scenario. I love decorative lighting. I think it should be a piece of art. It should be something that is really going to catch your eye. However, I do go into a number of homes and I see, you've sort of got to move your way around it to talk past it. It's maybe too low over the dining room table. It does need to have a bit of a task to it, or it needs to be supported by other ambient lights to give it the effect. But really, there are a number of options for a number of budgets, and really try and make that a piece of art. Make it something that's quite clever. So this is something that's just recently been released, and look how beautiful that is. And how much of a feature it's making inside this little apartment. It's quite unique, bright colors. There's very little art. It is actually the art.
It is actually art.
Here again, these are Tom Dixon pendants here. Very, very unique, nicely clustered over the dining room table. A beautiful product. It's nice and light. It's very similar to what the interior is letting off in terms of its visual aspect. This is an interesting fitting that I just wanted to, from an interest point of view, this is actually made out of cardboard. And it's something that when you see it up close, this is a different color rendition, but the point of interest. So when you're approaching it, it looks like something else, but when you're sitting right next to it, it's something else again. So it's giving a little bit of movement to the interior, and definitely being supported by a really good ambient light. You'll pick up those textures beautifully. Here you can see this is a very lightweight, possibly not giving off a lot of lumens at all, but supported beautifully with very good ambient light, which is picking up the texture of the wallpaper behind. But a beautiful fitting, and you could change the interior fit out quite significantly, but leave that fitting there and have many different looks. This is one of my favorites, and this is a floss fitting as well. And in fact, it's been around for maybe, 15 or 20 years now. But this is a beautiful fitting because it's very contemporary as you approach it. And if it was over a dining room table, as it is there, it's quite solid. It's got quite a definite form. But then when you're sitting at the table, it's got a story, and it's quite a contrast to the contemporary form of the fitting. So it's a bit of a surprise when you look at it. And those kind of things just plays on people, a bit quirky. Yeah. So that's the type of thing I recommend with pendants. Just stretch it out a little bit and save your pennies and put something in that's a little bit special. Okay, accent lighting. So accent lighting really is something that's going to accent the architecture or the building. It could be cove lighting. It could be, in this case, I've put some bollards out here because it's helping this exterior landscape come to life at night. And it's mercifully beautiful during the day, but at night it would just die to nothing. But they're putting in these very simplistic bollards, which are giving a very clear wash of light both behind the bollard and in front of the bollard, which is quite a challenge, but a really good quality of light. This is also architectural, but I just wanted to explain, and unfortunately I looked for better visuals of this particular building, but I really battled. But interestingly, you can't see one luminaire on that facade. So they are projecting really good quality light. There's no shadowing, but you can still see the depths of the arches and the textures. And by lighting that, the actual top roof at the back, it's sort of really giving you an idea of how big the building is and the scale of the building. And that's what you can do when you're playing with this light, is you can really throw back areas and bring areas forward and elevate the elevations and the volumes of buildings. So there's some very clever product out there. But this is really coming down to the quality of the light, which is giving us those real fine lines. And if you've traveled Europe a lot, you'll see this kind of thing regularly there. So a few tips. So warm white, neutral white or cool whites, you need to make sure you have the same color temperatures, I would say, in your home. I like the warmer tones for interiors, and I like the cooler tones for the exteriors. Offices would definitely be exterior. The reason why I like the warmer tones for interior is we've got a very bright light in the Southern Hemisphere, New Zealand, Australia. We have this beautiful bright light. When you come inside, you do want a little bit of a reprieve. Also, we do use a lot of beautiful tones of timber and stone and shuttered concrete in our interiors, and you can't pick up that warmth and those lovely warm tones with a cool white on that. So you really want to make sure you're enhancing the color of the product that the finishes that you're using. The color rendering, the CRI, is paramount now. It's in our lighting in interiors, you should not be accepting anything under the 90. If you can get to 95s, that's even better. Definitely for beautiful artwork, expensive artwork, you want to be increasing that CRI to as high an index as you can. 100 is basically good daylight. Okay, so you want to make sure that those are the elements that you understand when you are purchasing your lights or you're talking to your lighting designer. Living room, a mix of ambient, task, and accent is quite helpful. This may be dimmable light. You may run it in different zones or different areas. Where you've got your corner couch, maybe you might want to have some lighting above that, so that if you do want to pick up a book and read a book, you can flick that circuit on. Often we don't have the privilege of being able to redesign our circuits, but you can definitely play with dimmers and floor lamps to help enhance that. But any good architect or designer, lighting designer, will be able to advise you.
That was, one of the questions that I was wanting to ask you is, if you've got an open plan lounge, dining, kitchen, like most people do, how do you have all these different types of lighting without them clashing? So
first of all, you want the same color temperature, okay, so that it's not going to be obvious that there is a change of zones. You can have them all set on different dimmers. There's lots of dimming systems now. There's electronic dimmers where you can preset it for, it might be a control system of I don't know, a Dali or something like that, but you could set it for watching TV or reading or afternoon 3 o'clock, just like you can set music and things like that. So you would set it as that. But if you're going with something like the trimless fitting, which is the one that I showed you from Floss, you would hardly even see when those luminaires are on. And that's the trick, is to go for something that maybe is a little bit special, so that you haven't got hundreds of downlights dotted all over it. But when they're off, they're not noticeable. When they're on, it's just going to pick up your light a certain way. But you can absolutely design it, if you have the luxury of a new build, so that they're actually setting up areas, and they can overlap. They can absolutely overlap. I recall some years ago when I did a project, we actually used different size lenses on the fittings, and we really got them to overlap, and there would be different sequencing so that it just increased the light. So there's lots of options, and really you need to talk to someone that is involved with those designs every single day, because the technology is incredible.
Yes.
Okay. And the power use is so minimal. I mean, what we're getting with 4 watts or 5 watts or 6 watts, and the quality of light is quite different. So the investment is definitely in the luminaire, but you will see the benefits. And if you are on solar and things like that, this is things to be considering, so that you've got very little pull. Kitchen, you do need to have strong task lighting, but you also want to have ambient lighting because you spend so much time in the kitchen. You know, you don't want to walk from the fridge to the oven to the island and not really know where you're walking because you're coming out of a bright light and into a dark light and then into another bright light. So you do need to have that flow right. I definitely recommend on the ambient light have some controlling so you can lift it up. You know, you might be entertaining and having people around the kitchen, and then when the dishes are all there dirty stacked, you might just want to dim off a certain area and have a feature on another area where the bowl of fruit is or something on the island. So, you know, think about how you're going to use that space, how you're going to entertain in that space. As you say, many of them are open plan these days. Bedrooms, quite an interesting thing I see on plans that come across my desk is architects always want to put a light above the bed as a reading light. And I always say to them, you know, have you thought of lying down on that bed and looking at that and having that glare? So you want to make sure you get that positioning right. Also, not everybody lies in bed the same way. So something with a little bit more flexibility is something that I would recommend. But you want to be able to have a soft ambient light. You want to have the task light to read the book. You must remember that when you come into a bedroom, nowadays it's really highly recommended that this becomes a quiet zone and a chill out zone to try and you know, get those sleep mode coming through. So really consider how you're going to light that, not overly bright at all. Bathrooms. Now, we all hate that in hotels. You would definitely find that when you go to put your makeup on the mirror and all of a sudden you've got these extra wrinkles that you didn't have an hour earlier. And that really comes from lighting being in the wrong place. It's shadowing your face and it's enhancing that wrong look. So you really want to make sure you've got the light coming down in front of you and you know, maybe from sideways, so that you're getting better light and definitely better quality light, because it's just terrible if you walk out and you think your makeup's looking great, but then the minute you're in the sun, it's yellow or whatever the case is. So really think about that. Of course, bathrooms, IP rating. So the IP rating is the moisture and dust. So the two numbers that you see there, IP44, the 4 would be the dust, and the first 4, the second 4 would be the moisture. So you want to always make sure that you've got really high readings on the dust and the moisture. Exterior would be an IP65. So you're going to have a lot of dust on the exterior. You're going to have higher moisture, which will be at the 5. So you want to make sure you've got that IP rating. Something else in bathrooms, heated towel rails. Just, I know it's not lighting, but just consider the where you're placing all of that electrical work in your because you're going to have a transformer that's hidden, and it's going to have to be moisture proof. So just make sure you're tying that all in. Home offices, you definitely need a high level of light. We do know that a good high level of light is really going to keep our concentration, keep the working environment a lot better. So you want to have a balance of ambient, but you want to have that task lighting there. Hallways and stairs, of course, we can layer exactly like the hallway I showed you. We can add layers and we can have some different dynamics, but you really want to make sure that the floor space is safe and easy to walk. If you've got transition changes, stairs and things like that, that needs to be really highlighted. Mix of color temperatures is a no-no. Please avoid this. Decide on what your color temperature is going to be. Look at the finishes when you're designing. What do you need? Ask for samples, put it against those finishes and decide where you're going. But I would definitely go for warm colors for your home. Underlighting for critical tasks, we've been through that. I love that. I think it's a great way to have, you know, under counter step lights, even lighting behind the toilet that's on a sensor. If you've got kids, if they come into the bathroom in the middle of the night, the low level light behind the toilet comes on just on a sensor, so there's no one having to put lights on or off or things like that. But there's all of those things to consider. Poor color rendering, we've been through this. Really important. It needs to be above the CRI 90. Color does matter. Our our interiors have become so much more textured and layered with beautiful interior products and finishes, and then we're letting it down with terrible color rendering. And that's really it. Are there any questions? I think we've got a whole list there.
How can lighting make a small space feel larger?
Good question. So, a small space is always going to be a small space. I mean, you're an architect, you understand that. And playing with different textures and feels is definitely going to help. But with the lighting, you can actually throw a wall back, or you can bring a wall forward, or you can actually have some up lighting to create more of a volume. Lots of ways to play with it. It could also be that you detract the attention to maybe a textured wall so that the rest of the room, this tiny space, doesn't become a problem, that the attention is focused somewhere else. So you can play on focus points, and you can definitely create volume and space with lights. Yeah, absolutely.
Would lighting the ceiling assist?
It's just gonna create the void. It's gonna elevate the void. Yeah, absolutely. The problem with uplighting is you've got to really think, is it going to go in ground, or is it in a pot plant, or is it on a table? Because you don't want it to be shadowed if that room was to change its use or its flow. So you do need to think about that. So places that are quite handy is maybe at the entrance, where you've maybe got like an entrance way, you could use it on the pillars, or there may be an exit on the other side of the room going into another area where you could, and that furniture is never going to be there. Those kind of things would work. Yeah.
And what are the biggest mistakes that you've seen with lighting?
Too many. I used to call it the shotgun approach on the ceiling. Just too many down lights, and I'm like, oh my gosh, and a beautiful interior, but just lots of down lights. And back in those days, it was halogen and pretty glary and
no
dimmers, and So, and that is, I guess, when you're renovating a challenge to remove those and think about the new space with less light and get your head around that. Talk to someone that knows about the lighting.
And how early on do you suggest somebody gets lighting advice?
Early. So I recommend connecting with the architect or the interior designer and talking about the lighting and the possibilities and what you're wanting to achieve and how you live in your current home to what you want to be doing in your new home. You cannot do this early enough, because what it's going to do, it's going to have a knock-on effect on control systems. And are you using solar, or are you wanting sensors or things like that? Something to also think about is if you've got maybe a media room, you might want to have like rolling lights so that you can have different color temperatures of the day. There's been lots and lots of studies for that in bedrooms, so that you've got a wake up light and a going to sleep light, so that it wakes you up in a good mood, and your serotonin levels are correct and all of those kind of things, and then you go to bed. So there's lots and lots of studies about that. So there's definitely, I know in retirement villages now, they're really playing with that quite a bit, because it's actually reducing medication for elderly people by having the right color temperatures. Yeah, it's really interesting.
That's all preset?
All preset. So the test that they've done on it shows that if they're woken up with a certain level of light and the light ramps up, particularly when like early afternoon, when they're wanting to have a bit of a nap, they can increase the light levels. It sort of changes their whole way that they're feeling, and then it makes them sleep better at night, because they've not had to slip in and out of this. So there's even been studies on my kids are dairy farmers, so it really interested me that they've even had studies on how to fix cows. And in the northern hemisphere, a lot of those cow sheds or milking sheds, the cows don't go into a paddock, so they don't have sunlight in winter, and it's reduced sores and all sorts of things on cattle. So it's amazing how the color temperature can have an effect. Absolutely.
Very interesting. Kim, I've got so many more questions, but we've run out of time. So thanks so much for coming in. I always love it when you join me, because you've got so much experience and so much knowledge. So thanks a million for that. And just quickly to introduce next week's topic, we're going to be talking about landscaping ideas for small backyards. tips and tricks if you've got an unused space that you're wanting to do something with. We'll give you some advice on that as well. And something else you wanted to say?
Yes, I just want to say, hey, I've got a really good lighting checklist, which I'm more than happy to share with you. So if anybody would like that checklist, just drop Sean a message or contact her, and we'd be more than happy to share that checklist with you. Just some early considerations, and then some considerations in the design stage, and then the implementation stage. But it's important to get the lighting right. It's crazy to spend so much money on everything else and then skimp on the lighting.
That is true. You can contact us on our website as well, and then we can get that lighting checklist off to you. But thanks again for watching, and we'll be back next week with our next topic. Thank you.